India after its independence. Next, a new and dividend nation. Next, when India became independent in August 1974, it faced a series of very great challenges. As a result of partition, 8 million refugees had come into the country from what was now Pakistan. These people had to be found home and jobs. Then there was the problem of the princely states. Almost 500 of them, each ruled by a Maharaja or a Nawab, each of whom had to be persuaded to join the new nation. The problems of the refugee and of the princely states had to be addressed immediately. In the longer term, the new nation had to adopt a political system that would best serve the hopes and expectations of the population. Next, India's population in 1947 was large, almost 345 million. It was also divided. There were divisions between high castes and low castes, between the majority Hindu community and Indians who practiced other faith. The citizens of this vast land spoke many different languages, wore many different kinds to dress, ate different kind of food, and practiced different professions. How could they be made to live together in one nation state? Next to the problem of unity was added the problem of development. At independence, the vast majority of Indians lived in the village. Farmers and peasants dependent on the monsoon for their survival. So did the non-farm sector of the rural economy. For if the crops failed, barbers, carpenters, weavers, and other service groups would not get paid for their service either. In the cities, factory workers lived in crowded slums with little access to education or health care. Clearly, the new nation had to lift its mass out of poverty by increasing the productivities of agriculture and by promoting new job creating industries. Next, unity and development had to go hand in hand. If the divisions between different sections of India were not held, they could result in violent and costly conflicts. High castes fighting with low caste Hindus, the Muslims, and so on at the same time. If the fruits of economic development did not reach the broad mass of the population, it could create fresh divisions, for example, between the rich and the poor, between cities and the countryside, between regions of India that were prosperous and regions that lagged behind. Next, a constitution is written. Next, between December 1946 and November 1949, some there 100 Indians had a series of meetings on the country's political futures. The meetings of this constituted assembly were held in New Delhi, but the participants came from all over India and from different political parties. These discussions resulted in the forming of the Indian Constitution, which came into effect of 26 January 1950. Next, one feature of the Constitution was its adoption of universal adult franchise. All Indians above the age of 21 would be allowed to vote in state and national elections. This was a revolutionary step, for never before had Indians been allowed to choose their own leader in other countries such as the United Kingdom and the United States. This right had been granted in states. First, only men of property had the vote, then men who were educated were also added on. Working class men got the vote only after a long struggle. Finally, after a bitter struggle of their own, American and British women were granted the vote. On the other land, soon after independence, India chose to grant this right to all its citizens, regardless to gender, class, or education. A second feature of the Constitution was that it granted equality before the law to all citizens, regardless of their caste of religious affiliations. There were some Indians who wished that the political system of the new nation be based on Hindu ideal, and that idea India itself be run as a Hindu state. They pointed to the example of Pakistan, a country created expective protect and further of interests of a particular religious community, the Muslim. However, the Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru was to the opinion that India could not and must not become a Hindu Pakistan. Besides Muslims, India also had large populations of Sikhs and Christians as well as many parishes and Jains. Under the new constitutions, they would have the same rights as Hindu, the same opportunities when it comes to seeking job in government or the private sector, the same rights before the law. A third feature of the constitution was that it offered special privilege for the poorest and most disadvantaged Indians. The practice, the unfortunately described as a slaughter and bolt or the fair name of India, was abolished. Hindu temples, previously open to only the higher caste, were thrown open to all, including the former untouchables. After a long debate, the Constituent Assembly also recommended that a certain percentage of seats in legislatures as well as jobs in government be reserved for members of the lowest caste. It had been argued by them that some that untouchable or as they were no now Harijan candidates did not have good enough grades to get into the prestigious Indian Administrative Service, but as one member of the Constituent Assembly, H.J. Khandekar argued, it was the upper caste who were responsible for the Harijans being unfit today. Addressing his more privileged collegians, Khandekar said next, we were surprised you thousands of years. You annexed us in our service to serve our own ends and sport state us to such an extent that neither our mind nor our bodies and nor even our ears work, nor are we able to march forward. Stop.